You, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. You've been working hard to protect veterans who use medical marijuana. Tell me about that effort, because a lot of them are using it as a way to help with PTSD and other types of injury-related issues.
And when as a veteran, you kind of see it from the Veterans Affairs perspective. I've gone through the VA process and I use them for health care. So you see kind of the challenges that veterans face. When I campaigned and then after I got elected, I heard from a lot of veterans in my district. I have 9 counties, so a very diverse district, and a lot of them who had medicinal marijuana pursuant to their constitutional rights in Florida that were either hesitant or didn't know that they could also still use the VA because the VA used to do drug testing.
Wow.
And so you would have patients who had a medical marijuana prescription or recommendation who were legally using it in Florida, who either felt like they couldn't use the VA or were straight up told from the VA, you can't use VA services if you're on medicinal marijuana.
Wow.
So because the federal
a lot of misinformation in there.
At the very low end, some of it, people were outright told they couldn't use the VA services. So at the federal level, marijuana is still a Schedule I drug and illegal. So one of the things that we did, now there's some directives that the VA has that says that if the state has authorized medicinal marijuana, that the veterans can still use their services, but it's not clear, and any person could come in and change a directive. So I thought it was important that we changed the law and made it very clear that if you live in a state that has legalized medicinal marijuana and you're legally using that medicinal marijuana in that state, you're not going to lose your benefits with Veterans Administration.
And where does that stand?
We had a markup, well, not a markup, we had a hearing on the bill in one of the subcommittees. I've been told I have a Democratic co-sponsor, so it's a very bipartisan bill. I think that's one of the bills you'll see move through the process this year, a veteran-related bill that, there's not a lot of, the VA doesn't support it because they say they have a directive, but I think it needs to be in law. And I think that most Americans would agree, look, if the state that they live in has legalized it, and it's legal in their states, they shouldn't lose their benefits that they are awarded through the VA.
Is that fair to the veteran? I mean, a great effort, obviously, and certainly bipartisan, but is that fair to the veterans who don't live in a state that has medicinal marijuana? Is that not a reason why perhaps medicinal marijuana should be legal nationwide? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I support medicinal marijuana, especially for our veterans. I mean, if you look at, let's just talk about suicides. I mean, we're losing 21 veterans a day, active duty or veterans, to suicide. We've had hearings in the Veterans Affairs Committee about it. And nobody seems to know what the solution to that is. And if you talk to veterans who have either contemplated suicide or talked to veterans before they committed suicide, they talked about trying to use medicinal marijuana as a way to deal with PTSD, as a way to deal with some of the challenges that they're facing from a mental health perspective. So if we can provide that to them, I have absolutely no problem with that. I would support that. What we have to do at the federal level is declassify marijuana as a Schedule I to a different schedule so that veterans can take advantage of that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right. I mean, it's on the same level as coke and heroin and all these very serious drugs. So obviously that would be a first step, I'm sure. You've also introduced a bill to end the marriage tax penalty. Nothing worse than talking numbers on television, but tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, make marriage great again, Bill, is what we dubbed it. One of the things, being a younger member of Congress, I was married 7 years ago, and when we got married, we both had modest incomes, didn't have a big tax imprint, a big tax obligation. Then we got married. I remember calling my CPA and going, why do we have to pay so much more in taxes? And he's like, you made one mistake. You got married. And I don't think that we as a federal government should be penalizing couples just because they made the decision to get married. And the tax penalty, the marriage tax penalty, is significant. I mean, especially for modest to higher wage earners, you're going to see your tax obligation go up just by the mere fact that you got married.
Happened to me.
So couples may decide, well, let's just live together and not get married because of the financial obligation that we're going to have. And I don't think that's what our government should be doing. Our government should be encouraging marriage in couples, and we shouldn't be penalizing individuals through taxing them more if they decide to get married. So the bill that I have would do away with the marriage penalty.
There's a lot of political games being played over the hurricane funding or the disaster funding. What's happening here? We saw this blocked. Had you already left on Thursday?
We had left. We actually had been told that the Senate, the last we had heard, so everybody, we adjourned, went on recess. I had thought that the Senate wasn't going to take it up, and while I was in the plane, I was watching the news and saw that the Senate decided to vote on it, and I didn't even realize that one single member can object to the unanimous consent and pass it. And so a member from Texas did that, And I can tell you there's probably a lot of Florida members, even he's a Republican, even in our own party, that are frustrated by that because now you're delaying the inevitable. I mean, the bill's going to pass. It's going to become law. It was a bipartisan supported bill. Congressman Dunn's been very active with it because his district was hit very, very hard by the hurricane. And those people in the Panhandle are looking for some relief. I mean, if you tour that area now, you'll see that a lot of that area still hasn't been rebuilt. So it's going to delay the ability for the disaster relief to go through. But you know, it's unfortunate they did it in the time period they did it because we're not going to be up there until next Monday.
Yeah.
So it delays it a week and a half.
This is Republican Chip Roy, I believe, was the congressman from Texas who blocked this bill because it didn't include border funding. Regardless of how you feel about the border wall and President Trump's efforts, these two things are not related.
Well, and I think one of the other things that he had, which is an issue, and I have similar concerns, is the offset of the deficit. So we're spending this money and not offsetting on the deficit. I just don't think that you should make such a political maneuver on something that obviously a large part of our country is needing. Texas was hit by some of the natural disasters you've seen. Louisiana and Florida obviously has been hit. So it's unfortunate. It's obviously going to pass. It's just going to take now an extra week and a half.
Representative Greg Steube from Sarasota and many other counties, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it.
Yeah,
we'll be right back.